Oh my God, he's engulfed with flames, like a cocoon of fire around this young guy.
Today is a very tragic day in the city of Portland.
5 people are dead and another is seriously hurt after a morning fire in Portland. The fire started at an apartment building near the University of Southern Maine campus. Last night, it was the site of a Halloween party. Tonight, officials are trying to figure out what started this fire. CBS 13's Katie Sampson begins with our team coverage tonight on the scene. Katie?
Jen, we're at the scene right now where it's still an active investigation into this fire. We're at the intersection of Friedman and Noyes, not far from Forest Avenue. As you can see, fire officials, crews are still on scene. The Portland Fire Chief confirms the death toll in this fire is now up to 5. They have not made any identifications on who the victims are, but they have been removed from the building, and they say the medical examiner's office is working to identify them right now. Police got several calls from neighbors after 7 this morning reporting the fire in this 2-unit apartment house. Chief Jerome Lamoria says when crews got on scene, the fire had advanced tremendously, and they continued to put out hot spots all day. He says in addition to the fatalities, 2 people were hurt. State police say one of those victims jumped from a 2nd-story window and is in critical condition at a Boston hospital burn unit. We're told 7 people escaped the fire uninjured. Officials say there were some USM students who lived in this home, but we don't know if any of the victims were students because they have not been identified. Chief Lamoria says right now they don't know what caused this fire, and the investigation is going to be extensive and could last several days.
With the amount of people involved, agencies involved, the extent of the damage, and the number of victims, there's a lot of parts to this investigation that we have to put together.
The chief says Portland did see 2 fatal fires last year, but he couldn't recall one of this magnitude. This has really shaken Portland. It's also shaken this neighborhood. People who live near here, who saw the fire, who saw people escaping. To talk more about that, I'm going to have Jared Pelletier join me now. Jared, you've been talking to neighbors in this area all day. What have they been saying about what they saw this morning?
Katie, they're describing it as devastating. There's a look of disbelief on people's faces out here, trying to imagine how something like this could happen in their neighborhood. One neighbor tells me it was a quiet morning up until she heard a bang. Shortly after, she ended up seeing something she never imagined she would see.
I saw a young man dashing from the Porsche. He was engulfed with flames. He rolled on Freeman Street trying to put the flames out.
A horrific scene this morning for neighbors and witnesses, especially now that they know 5 people have died tragically. Some tried to help, but it was too late.
I went around to the back door area and I tried to get in, but I couldn't even get close enough. It was so hot. The fire was just so intense. It's unbearable. It's just so sad.
People on Noyes Street are still in shock. The smell of smoke still lingers along with the mental pictures of what they saw. Victims' family members are on the minds of many.
It'll live with me for a long time, but it will live with them for the rest of their life.
It was horrific sight to see.
Neighbors here say there was a loud party at this house last night, and now they wish they had taken action.
I almost feel that if I would have called the cops last night and complained about the noise, that maybe this wouldn't have happened.
A very tough loss for people here to deal with.
5 people dead, 1 gravely injured, now at a special burn unit in Boston, with investigators still trying to pinpoint exactly how this happened.
Those investigators are now getting federal help from the ATF. They're trying to figure out what caused Saturday's deadly fire. Investigators are releasing the cause of death, saying all 5 people, all in their 20s, died from smoke inhalation.
Fox 23's Jennifer Long is joining us live from Portland, where she got an update from the fire chief earlier tonight. Yeah.
Yeah, well, the Portland Fire Chief held a press conference here at City Hall earlier today. He wanted to update us on their investigation and also let us know about the help they're getting. But he did start that press conference today with releasing the names of those 5 victims and reminding everyone what a horrible tragedy this truly is.
The community is grieving the loss of 5 young lives.
Today, Lamoria identified the victims pictured here on Facebook.
David Bragdon Jr., 27, who was a tenant of the building. Ashley Thomas, 29, who was a tenant of the building. Melisha Jackson, 26 of Thompson, who was a visitor. And Christopher Conley, 25 of Portland, who was a visitor.
LaMoria also said medical examiners are still working to identify Nicole Finlay, a 26-year-old tenant of the building who also is believed to have died in that fire. All of the victims died of smoke inhalation. The cause is still under investigation.
The circumstances of this tragedy are being meticulously examined in order to provide the answers and the closures that these lives deserve.
The Federal Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms is in Portland to help find those answers, providing resources that aren't available at the state and local level.
We've had a tragedy in our community, and we're dealing with that. And we want to make sure that we take the meticulous step that's necessary to find out how this happened and take any steps that we can to make sure that it doesn't happen like this again.
Now, many people are wondering whether or not there were any code violations in that building. Today, the fire chief addressed that and says that is something that they are looking into right now. The state fire marshal's office does have the code inspection file for that building. Right now, they're not releasing any of that information. Live in Portland, Jennifer Long for Fox 23 News at 10.
A survivor from that Noyes Street fire tells Fox 23 he made it out alive because of his roommate.
He woke up to the smell of smoke and then looked up and saw that his ceiling was on fire and ran out of his bedroom.
He says it was the longest 7 minutes of his life waiting for firefighters to arrive, and he tells Fox 23's Katie Sampson he's beyond lucky to be alive.
Yeah, I had one angel looking over me that day at least.
Kyle Bozeman is still in pure disbelief.
I had this bad feeling in my stomach the whole time, that people were up there.
7:15 Saturday morning, his roommate's alarm went off, and he says that's when the chaos began.
He woke up to the smell of smoke and then looked up and saw that his ceiling was on fire and ran out of his bedroom.
He went to Bozeman's room, woke him up, and they both escaped through his window onto an awning. Bozeman says he stayed there yelling to whoever was still inside, but it got too hot and he had to jump down.
And stood there and probably had the longest 7 minutes of my life until the fire department got there. It seemed like an hour.
Meanwhile, Stephen Summers, who is recovering at Mass General Hospital in critical condition, had jumped from a second-story window.
He had pants on at one point, and you could tell that they were just burned off of him. And
Kristen Burns tried to help Summers while her mom called 911.
And his hands, he was looking at his hands, and he saw that he was really burned, and that's when he asked us if he had been on fire.
There was a light drizzle at that moment in time too, so steam was almost bellowing off of it.
Still coming to grips with what happened, Bozeman mourns the loss of those who couldn't escape.
They had nothing but big hearts. They had nothing but love. You could just tell by the ripple effect that sent across Portland how much they really meant to so many people.
Even residents who didn't know those affected have heavy hearts.
Yeah, I've lived in Portland all my life, so I knew this house anyway. I've driven by it so many times, but 5 young people, it's a tragedy. It's absolutely a tragedy.
Bozeman also says the support from the community has been absolutely overwhelming, and we're already hearing of events being scheduled to remember these victims. One of those events is going to be at the Great Lost Bear. It's scheduled for next Wednesday, November 12th from 5 to 8 p.m. In Portland, Katie Sampson, Fox 23 News at 10.
Kind of almost feel cried out.
The 6 victims of the Noyes Street fire are honored at a candlelight vigil tonight. That vigil came 10 days after one of the deadliest fires in Portland in decades.
While the cause of that fire is still under investigation tonight, for those who died, it was a chance to remember them. And for those left behind, a chance to heal.
We're here tonight because in one way or another, we have all been affected by this tragedy in our neighborhood.
Hundreds gathered in the early evening darkness, friends, neighbors, loved ones, some survivors of the fire, all gathering for the 6 young people who died.
Stephen Summers.
Love you, Daddy.
Reading their names one by one, sharing their grief, a heavy load made lighter together.
We hold lights tonight, and we proclaim that light is stronger than darkness. May our lights be symbols tonight of all that is good and true and beautiful.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound.
In the crowd, about 20 firefighters and first responders, many there that morning, risking their own lives, now sharing their own grief.
We're with you, but know that we're right here, with you, trying to help heal, and we hurt just as you guys do.
At the end, the crowd marched to the site of the fire, sprinkling water that had been blessed.
To mark this space as sacred, to comfort one another, to share our hearts with one another.
We also spoke for the first time with the widow of the 6th victim of this fire. 29-year-old Stephen Summers, a Navy veteran, at first survived the fire. He actually leapt from the 2nd story while on fire. He was visiting friends there that night, but he died several days later at a Boston hospital. Tonight, his widow spoke to us for the first time, saying she appreciated tonight's ceremony, both for herself and for her 2 young daughters, ages 3 and 5. She says her greatest fear now is they won't remember him.
I think I'm more fearful, not so much when the girls are crying as when they're not remembering. And I know we talked tonight about remembrance, so that part helped me a lot because, she said that, and it's like, that is the part that I fear the most, because of their age.
She says her husband made a lot of videos for their daughters, hoping to give them to them at their graduations, which she now plans to share with them early and often. There's also a GoFundMe page that's been set up to raise money to help the Summers family, those 2 little girls. You can find information about that, again, at GoFundMe, and we have information on our homepage, WGME.com. Hearts strung on a rope hang outside that burned home in Portland where 6 people lost their lives. While firefighters still look into the cause of this, family and friends are trying to heal. And as CBS 13's Jared Pelletier shows us tonight, that continued at the Great Lost Bear in Portland.
Those who knew David Bragdon Jr. say he wanted everyone to smile. So tonight, friends and family try their best.
Having people that love David around me makes me feel good.
They have their days, ups and downs.
It is a roller coaster,
Yesterday being one of the lowest of lows.
They brought his ashes home. That was probably the hardest thing I ever had to do.
But this, laughing, crying, sharing stories. Loved ones say it helps ease some of the pain. Friends and co-workers put this together.
It's just been really rough. It's been really rough, and a lot of us here need this.
One thing still weighing heavily on everyone's minds: how did this all happen? Right now, there's still no word on what caused this tragic fire.
It's tough not knowing, I mean, the grieving process has begun, but usually with the grieving process, you have enough answers to properly grieve.
All 6 victims are on people's minds, especially for David's family.
There's a bunch of people that are in the same scenario, and I grieve for them too.
We knew all those kids.
And one day at a time, with each other, clinging on to fond memories left behind, they'll push forward.
The hugs, the handshakes, the I'm sorries, they've all helped.
If you did know him, you did love him. There was no not liking him.
In Portland, Jared Pelletier, CBS 13 News.
The Noyes Street building where 6 people died in a fire last year will be torn down. The city issued a permit for that demolition yesterday, and today CBS 13's Courtney Highfield spoke to those affected by that decision.
Kathy Wilson's son lived at 20 Noyes Street. He wasn't home when the fire broke out, but his friends were. Wilson stops by that house every now and then.
I look at it and I thank God that, he's still here with us. And then I also have the feelings of the other families. I mean, I just can't even imagine.
Wilson sees the house as a reminder of that day and wants it torn down for herself.
Besides being a hazard to the city, it doesn't need to be rebuilt. I mean, people died. We need to tear the building down, and we need to put some green space there.
And for her son.
I do know that the family that he had there, his friends, he calls the Star family, I think it would be a wonderful place for the people that did survive, have a place to go and sit and not have to say, oh, that is where the house used to be, and have another house there.
Neighbors say the house is an eyesore. They want it gone too.
It was a sad event for sure. It was a real tragedy, but I'll be glad to see the house demolished or restored one way or the other. As it is now, it's not great.
The permit gives the owner 30 days to demolish the building. In Portland, Courtney Highfield, CBS 13 News.